Egunon, haize ondo entzuten dan. A ber, argazkitxo bat aterako dizkizu, argazkitxo batzuk ateratzen ari gera oraintzen, iritsi da profesor Strickland, bertan geneukan ja profesor Smoot, Pedro Miguel Etxenike, eta hori, eskerrik asko. Ez begiratu neri, begiratu beraiei eta egin irriparre, oso pozik zaudetelako. Venga, gora bihotzak, altxa danak. Thank you. Venga, eskuak gora. Hemen, manexari zait hemen aginduak ematen. Eskuak gora. A ber. Oso ondo. Saria dago gaina, Bueno, ez eskuak altxatzeagatik, baina venga, ba. Oso ondo. Txaloka nahi badezue, venga, txaloat, hori da, venga. Ze ondo, jende, ze ondo. Zer du deu? Esko gera? Egunon berriz, nik uste ja, asteko moduan gaudela, danak iritsi zeate, eskerrik asko gaur honetar hor bildu zeaten guztiei. Ekitaldiari hasiera formala hasi baino leno, komentatuko dizuet, banatu dizkizueten kaskoak itzultzaile simultaneorako dirala, gazteleraz egongo da entzuterik lehenengo kanalean, ingelesez bigarrenean, eta euskaraz hirugarrenean. As I was saying, if you wish to listen to different languages, thanks here also for the people working up there, translating everything that is going to happen. There will be Spanish in channel 1, English in channel 2, and Basque in channel 3. So, as I was saying, thank you very much for being here. Eskerrik asko, etorri zeaten guztiei, agintariak, antolatzaileak, nola ez Nobel Prize saridunak eta ikasle guztiei, zein ekitaldia horrera ateratzeko teknikari guztiei eta antolakontza dauden guztiei. 12. edizioan gaude, eta jakingo dezutenez, pasioz beteriko astea daukagu aurretik, atzo eman genion hasiera Donostin, hasiera zoragarri bat, hain zuzen ere Donna Stricklanden hitzaldi bat eduki genuen esateko, baina jakin dezazuen gauza asko gertatuko dirala, orduan, hemendikan ateratzean gehiago jakin nahi badezue, jarraitu ezazue esare sozialetan edo behiratu gure webgunean. Naukas, bertsoak passion, txiki, streamer saioak, Bilbon ere hitzaldiak esango dira, Strom astronomia erakusketa gongo da Donostian ikusgai hilabete guztian zehar. Baina, bueno, gaur hemen gaude zuekin eta zuek zeate gaur gure benetazko protagonistak. Topaketak ditugu, esan bezala 12. urtez antolatu ditugu, eta gaur 180 ikasle baino gehiago hurbildu zerate gunegana. Horrek esan nahi du, bakoitzak 3 galdera bidali badizkiguzue, imaginatu zenbat galdera puxka daukagun, hori gure ikerlarientzat, ze benetan lan bikaina egin dezute. Bueno, pixka bat azalduko dizuet nola jungo dan ekitaldia. Hementxe gaude, laister izango ditugu gure izlarien, gure agintarien hitz batzuk hasiera emateko, gero sartuko gera ja zozketan, galderen zozketan, bukatzeko egingo dugu argazkitxo bat, eta ja 11:00 eta kafetxoa eukiko dugu, eta han ere aukera izango dezue hitz egiteko bai Strickland profesorearekin eta baita Smoot profesorearekin. As I was saying, thank you very much for being here, Professor Strickland, Professor Smoot. It is a pleasure for me, and I believe that I can say that it is for everyone to have you here, and we are honored that you can take your time to share it with our wonderful and future scientists. Okay. Baina nola ez, pues organizar estas cosas sería imposible sin tener el apoyo de los patronos, tanto públicos como privados, que colaboran con el DIPC. En concreto, estamos, de hecho, en casa de uno de estos patronos, en casa de la UPV, de la Universidad Pública del País Vasco, y tenemos con nosotras a Eva Ferreira, que es la rectora de la UPV, que nos va a dedicar unas palabras de bienvenida. Muchísimas gracias, Eva. Cuando quieras, te...
Eskerrik asko. Donostia International Physics Centerreko presidente jauna, zuzendari jauna, Telefonika Euskadi Presako zuzendari jauna, profesor Donna Strickland, profesor George Smoot, jaun Andreok, egunon eta ekitaldi honetara ongi etorri izan zaitezte. Good morning, and on behalf of the University of the Basque Country, my warmest welcome to this new event of the Passion for Knowledge Festival, organized by the Donostia International Physics Center, especially aimed at young students as you. I would like to express the satisfaction of our university, which is the only university that is part of this team of Donostia International Physics Center, for hosting this meeting. Passion for Knowledge is a project with international relevance, awakening scientific vocation among young people and increasing social interest in science. Yesterday, a new edition of this Passion began in San Sebastián, and we are happy to host the activities today here in Bilbao, in our house in the University of the Basque Country. Oraintxe bertan, goi mailako 3 zientzialari elkartuko dira zuekin hemen, Bizkaia aretoan, zientzia zabaltzeko jardunaldi honetan, Pedro Miguel Etxenike eta 2 Nobel saridunak, Donna, Strickland and George Smoot. So welcome to all of you, and thank you for your attendance at this international gathering. And I wish you the great stay here in the Basque Country, and particularly today here in Bilbao. Haiek nik baino beto jakingo dute, seguro nago, topaketa hauen oinarri den ezagutzeko irrikapizten. Eta animatuko zaituzte, ere zientziari jakin minez eta interesez begiratzera. Ezagutza aparteko abentura bat da, baina abentura horretan gizon eta emakume handiek guk baino lehenago parte hartu dute. Sortea da, haiekin egotea beraz, eta haien lanari buruzko galderak egitea. Horregatik, gaurkoa aukera bikaina da zientziaz gehiago jakiteko. Pues sí, hoy tenéis una oportunidad extraordinaria para conocer de cerca a estas grandes personalidades de la ciencia. Creo que cuando el profesor Etxenike concibió Passion for Knowledge, no solo acertó al perfilar los objetivos de esta iniciativa, sino también a elegir el nombre de la misma. Pasión y razón no son lo mismo, pero os aseguro que desde luego en el entorno de la ciencia, del conocimiento, de la curiosidad por entender el mundo, están muy unidas y se alimentan la una a la otra. Así que ahora y en la vida, haced caso a vuestra pasión para producir ideas, para producir preguntas y usad la razón para articular las respuestas. Seguid vuestra pasión, vuestra vocación y con actitud, esfuerzo y a través del conocimiento y de la razón, el futuro es vuestro. Así que, sin más, gracias por estar hoy aquí, gracias a personas e instituciones que hacéis que Passion for Knowledge sea posible. Eskerrik asko.
Mila esker, Ferreira Anderea, guztiz bat nator zurekin eta eskerrik asko zure hitzengatik. Tenemos también a otro de los grandes patronos del DIPC con nosotros, Javier Benito, es el director de Euskadi de Telefónica y además, pues bueno, traerán sorpresa luego porque Telefónica da un premio a la mejor pregunta, así que ahora le voy a ceder la palabra para que nos haga una introducción. Nada.
Bueno, egun on denori, George, Donna, welcome to Bilbao, welcome to Passion for Knowledge. Pedro y Ricardo y resto del IPC, muchas gracias por, como todos los años, cuidarnos también como a Telefónica, como patronos del DIPC, y Eva, estudiantes y futuros investigadores, mila esker etortzeagatik. Hoy es un día bonito, ¿vale? Y yo creo que lleváis, no sé si unos días, unas semanas en la Icastola, en el colegio, pues estudiando las vidas de George, de Donna y sus estudios científicos. Pero yo diría que aprovechemos la jornada de hoy. No todos los días tenemos a 2 premios Nobel y a un príncipe de Asturias aquí delante con nosotros durante un par de horas haciéndoles preguntas. Yo creo que es un auténtico privilegio y para mí es uno de esos días que nunca me gusta perderme y que sí o sí siempre digo que quiero estar, ¿no? No solo aprendo de ellos, sino que también aprendo mucho de vosotros y las preguntas pues desde otro enfoque y otra visión que soléis dar, ¿no? Y un poco para acabar, yo creo que muchos diréis, oye, ¿qué narices hace Telefónica hoy aquí? ¿No? Y a ver si en 30 segundos lo explico y empezamos con lo importante, pues que son Donna, George y Pedro, ¿no? La ciencia es el origen de prácticamente todo. Nosotros como Telefónica somos una empresa, vamos a hacer 100 años, pero somos una empresa innovadora y tecnológica y no existiríamos si no estamos muy pegados a la tecnología y muy pegados a la ciencia, ¿no? Con lo cual, para nosotros, desde que se creó el DIPC, poder estar apoyando a la ciencia, a la divulgación científica y a todas las habilidades STEM desde Telefónica y en Euskadi, pues obviamente no nos lo pensamos y desde inicio estamos con el DIPC, ¿no? Con lo cual, si queremos seguir siendo una empresa tecnológica en la que vamos metiendo el 5G o las fibras, las redes, cualquiera de los servicios que tenemos, es porque la ciencia evoluciona y esa ciencia somos capaces de hacerla pues un servicio para todos nosotros, ¿no? Con lo cual, no seríamos nada si no estamos muy pegados a la ciencia y a la evolución tecnológica. Y poco más. Agradeceros vuestra presencia hoy aquí, el esfuerzo que habéis hecho antes de venir aquí con los estudios previos y nada más. Disfrutar, ¿vale? Eskerrik asko.
Mila esker, Benito jauna. Ez da PowerPointa ikusten, komentatzen dut hor teknikariei, jakin dezazuen, PowerPoint hor. Bakarrik nahi nuen errepasatu nundikoa zen eta nola jongo dan, ze orain ja laister zuen txanda izango da. Errepasatuko dugu pixka bat, esan dizuet ja zuen galdera guztiak jaso genituen, dauzkazue danak hor lista batean, eta zozketa baten bidez, aukeratuko dugu zeintzuk aterako diran. Saiatuko gera, alik eta galdera gehien egiten, eta saiatu gera, ez daitezen errepikatzen eta bar, baina benetako protagonismoa zuek eukiko dezut. Eta gure gonbidatuek esan duten bezala, ez galdu aukera hau, ez daukagu egunero aukera, 2 Nobel sari eta Príncipe de Asturias batekin horrela mintza egiteko. Así que preste egon zaitezte, adizuen galderaren zenbakia ateratzen bada, eta bueno, sistema oso erresa da. Ikusiko dezuenez, jarriko dut, ikus dezagun, hortzen goaz. Hortzen dago, behitu. 3 galdera mota daude, badakizue, zuek ere bidali zenizkiguten, izan daiteke biografikoa, izan daiteke zientifiko-teknikoa, izan daiteke orokorra, eta aldi berean egon daiteke zuzenduta edo Strickland profesoreari, edo Smoot profesoreari, eta, bueno, Pedro egingo du berak moderatzaile lanak, eta bere esku egongo da ere, pixkabet arintzea saioa, ezta? Nik sakatuko dut botoia, eta zenbaki bat aterako da, zenbaki hori ateratzen danean listan ikusiko dezu zein dan, pantailan agertuko da zei ikastolari dagokio, eta pantailan agertuko da ere galdera bera, bai? Baina zuei pasako dizuegu mikrofonoa eta zuek egin beharko dezue. Ados? Bueno, nire itzako plazer izugarria da, ja, dagoeneko, holtzara igotzea Pedro Miguel Etxenike, bai ez? Venga, Pedro Miguel Etxenike, George Smoot, Eta Donna Strickland, please come here with me. Thank you very much. Pedro, zurea hitza. Eskerrik asko hirurei.
Ni hemen etxean bezala sentitzen naiz, ni Euskal Herriko Unibertsitatekoa naiz, eta hau nire etxea da. Beti harro izan naiz eta nago, hemengo irakaslea izateagatik. Telefónica, claro, casi es mi pequeña casa, como pequeña accionista. Yo de vez en cuando miro cómo va la acción y veo, pero con esta tecnología tan grande, ¿cómo es posible que la acción no suba? Pronto nos dará una alegría, estoy convencido. Pero Telefónica siempre ha sido, desde el comienzo, un leal aliado de IPC, porque entiende que una empresa competitiva también necesita un entorno competitivo. Entonces ahora presentamos a los...
Exacto, sí.
¿Quién lo presenta?
Según mi guión lo presentabas tú, Pedro.
Ah, sí. Bueno,
pero
pues entonces...
Pero tienes chuleta.
Muy brevemente, como tenemos mucho interés en fomentar las preguntas y hay tantas preguntas, los currículos de los ponentes los conocéis bien y presentar a dos científicos de esta eminencia es muy fácil. Donna Strickland, Premio Nobel de Física, George Smoot, Premio Nobel de Física. Nothing less, nothing more. Y ahora empezamos ya con las preguntas.
yo creo que sí.
The only request, because there are so many questions, I already told you, but I insist, short answers, and your English, your beautiful English, will be better understood if it is spoken slowly.
Do our best.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. I completely agree, Pedro. So, as you say, let's begin. Why not? ¿Qué te parece? Empezamos con una pregunta biográfica, científica técnica.
Biográfica.
Venga, pues vamos a ver. Me siento como en la lotería de Navidad. Vale, lo hemos probado antes y ya funciona. Ahora necesito ayuda técnica, porque está diciendo aquí login. Javier Benito, por favor, ¿puedes subir el teléfono?
Pues,
No, os digo en serio que lo hemos probado 8 veces, no una ni dos, ¿verdad?
esto muestra algo que siempre digo yo, que ciencia es lo que un padre enseña a una hija. Y tecnología, lo que la hija le enseña al padre. Y aquí necesitamos uno de vosotros que suba y arregle esto.
Ya está.
Ya está.
Venga, pregunta biográfica, perdón. Y el número es el 20. Me encanta esta parte. Santa María y Castechea, de Portugalete. Ahí está. Y es una pregunta para Donna Strickland.
¿Tenías claro desde muy joven dedicarte a este ámbito o por el contrario algo te hizo cambiar de rumbo, estudiar física e investigar los láseres?
Okay. It's very loud. Let me take this out. So when I was in high school, I probably would have said I was going to do math because I was very good at math and I just found it a lot of fun. But I was very shy. And my sister and best friend went to the University of Waterloo, which is where I am now, and it's the best place for math. So I said, I have to go somewhere where nobody knows me. So I thought I won't do math because I'm not going to Waterloo. And so then I chatted, physics was my second choice. And I chose to go to McMaster, and it had a part that was lasers and electro-optics in the engineering physics program, and it just struck me as something really fun to do. So I knew from 18 this is what I would do.
Good.
Great.
Another one, another biographical, another for Smoot.
¿Hacemos una biográfica a ver si le toca a George o nos pasamos a la científica?
Well, maybe
Maybe he can also answer in the same line, no?
Just pick at random.
random. Because
You rather have a random one? Okay, let's go. Otra biográfica, venga. 38, Geita Mezortzi. Bayonti, Portugalete. And this goes for everyone.
Hi, vale. Did you know, since you were in high school student, that you wanted to study at college, or what you wanted to do for a living?
Thank you for your question. The answer is no, I didn't know. I knew I wanted to study and learn more about the world and learn how things work and learn, just the way things were. And that was my primary motivation. It's still my motivation.
but
Yeah, I kept it short.
Okay,
whatever.
we're going to change now and we're going to go to scientific and technique questions. The number is 4. And that belongs to Colegio San Pelayo, Ikastetxea, Ermuan. And it goes to...
Did you imagine that you will win the Nobel
No sé.
Prize for the research in laser technology? Did you imagine the possible application while you were developing in laser technology?
No. We knew at the time it was going to be very important for our field of high-intensity laser physics. We were not trying to do the applications that have now come out, which is for the eyes and for machining glass. We had no idea about that. And I will also say that at the same time we were doing our work, somebody at a different institute was coming up with a new type of laser crystal. And it was the combination of these two things that made it really big. So we couldn't have imagined that.
Jarraituko dugu pixka bat zientifiko-teknikoekin. Venga. 127. Laudi oragoaz. Eta George Smoot zentzat da.
For you.
It's for me, but
No, they will stand up and ask.
I'm looking. Yeah. Oh, there she is. I can.
Zein da zure iritzia lur planetatik kanpo bizitza egon daitekeelaren inguruan?
Un poco más lento las preguntas, por favor. Repite, lenta, tranquila, que tú puedes.
Zein da zure iritzia lur planetatik kanpo bizitza egon daitekeelaren inguruan?
Okay, I think about it a lot. I've been involved in SETI for more years than you have been alive. And so it's actually a good question because we're finally getting to the point where we're beginning to have evidence that life may exist on other planets. So one of the people that I'm working with at the IPC, we're involved in a project with the James Webb Space Telescope, and James Webb Telescope recently found the spectrum of a planet that had in it chemicals that are chemicals that on Earth only life forms make. So we're getting hints. We know roughly half the stars have planets around them. We know that means there's more than 100 billion planets in the galaxy, and we know that a good fraction of those are in what we call a habitable zone. So we know the conditions that make life good for it exist in a large number of places in our galaxy, and there are billions of galaxies. And so the chances of life seem to be enough, but given the kind of hints we're getting from seeing other planets, life might be fairly common. So I believe that in your lifetime, not so many years from now, we're going to have a lot of direct evidence for life in other solar systems.
La presentación ha sido tan breve que se me ha olvidado algo muy importante, es que el profesor Smoot trabaja 20% de su tiempo en el Donostia International Physics Center in San Sebastian. We are also interested in lasers, so maybe next time Professor Strickland will join us. So thank you very much. So to have a Nobel Prize is not enough, it's also working in diabetes.
Nice try, Pedro. Ok, vamos con una general. 71. Mendebaldea Vitoria-Gasteizetik etorri omen dira. Ez dira etorri? Ah.
Gauza handiak lortzea da askoren helburua, baina behin Nobel saria irabazita, bizitzako helburua lortu duzula sentitzen duzu. Ala beste helbururen baten premia duzu?
Who's she asking? Donna?
Go for it. No, you go for it.
Oh, I see.
For both of you.
Okay. Yes. So it's been the policy that once you get one Nobel Prize, you don't get another now because there are more things that are worth a Nobel Prize than there are Nobel Prizes to give out. And so it's very rare to get a second prize. But it doesn't mean that some of us don't want to keep knowing. In my case, there are some questions I want to know the answers to. I keep doing research, I keep doing that stuff. And I also want to pass down the enterprise of science to the next generation in as good a form as I got it. And so you don't stop, and I have many colleagues that don't stop. Some are continuing to drive. One of the Nobel laureates is here with us. He complains that he's dragged out to too many talks because he's got research he wants to get done before he dies. So the answer is, for many Nobel laureates, they think there's more they need to do and I want to do.
Yes. I would just add, I did not have the goal to win a Nobel Prize. I just really wanted to have a job that I found fun. And so I really do like playing with my lasers, and I still wish I had time to play with my lasers. But I also think that when we are given the Nobel Prize, we are given a voice, and this is why we are the ones invited to things like this, and I think it's important for the public in general to understand the impact of science on society, and so I think this is why we take on this role, which means there's less time for our science.
I want to say another thing, and I'm looking at the eminent person from Telefonica. There are many things you do. As a Nobel laureate, you get called not only to have a voice in the public, but also have a voice in the private sector, on boards and on other things. I found, by surprise, myself on the board of quantum communications thing that was going on, which was a surprise to me, apparently eventually to the Chinese government. But in fact, you might know there have been a Chinese satellite that does quantum communications from the ground, one place on the ground to another place on the ground, and also from on the ground to Austria. And it is part of what we see happening in the telephone business in the future, that there will be quantum communications for the internet and for the telephone calls as a way to improve the quality and the security of the systems. And in fact, that progress is going on in a great way. So you're called not only to talk about your expertise, but to be called for advice in other areas. It's quite a surprising extra opportunity or burden you might have.
Okay. Thank you very much. very interesting points. Two small things. First, our Telefonica company that is supporting the IPC has one of the most eminent quantum physicists in the world in the board of trustees, that will be speaking, in fact, I think this afternoon in San Sebastián, Ignacio Cirac. Y otra cosa, como dato, creo que solo hay una persona que ha sido premio Nobel de Física 2 veces, creo. De química y física, y Madame Curie, también Sanger, pero de física solo creo que hay una persona que ha sido premio Nobel. No quiere decir que haya muchos que lo hubiesen merecido, como Einstein o muchos. Creo que es John Bardeen, premio Nobel de Física en el 57 por el transistor y en el 72 por la teoría BCS de superconductividad. Un dato.
Un dato. Un dato muy interesante, y el profesor Smoot me ha comentado antes que hoy se entrega el premio Nobel, hoy se decide el premio Nobel de Física mientras estemos aquí en la sala, o sea que en algún momento igual hasta podemos saber quién es el nuevo premio Nobel de Física.
Estoy seguro que el director del DIPC me lo pasará para que lo anuncie desde aquí.
Lo podemos anunciar en directo y en riguroso...
Pido el privilegio.
Vamos con una pregunta biográfica, si os parece. La número es la 64 del Instituto Minas de Baracaldo. Y es para George Smoot.
Zergatik interesatu zaizkizu mikrominak eta horiek unibertsoaren sorkuntzarekin duten harremana?
Okay, so this is an interesting question because it wasn't that I was interested in microwaves. It's just because the universe is expanding, the light that was very bright, brighter than the sun, because of the expansion of the universe, is at the present time is in the peaks of the microwave. The universe has expanded by more than a factor of 1,000 since that epoch. So in order for me to study the beginning of the universe and use the light from the beginning of the universe to make an image of the embryo universe, I had to make it using microwaves. So I was interested in the microwaves because that's where the light in the universe is from.
Guazen aurrera, the more the merrier, científico-técnico. A ver. Amairu. Miguel de Unamuno, Bilbotik. Eta berriz profesor Smootentzat.
The ballot favors Smoot.
That's okay.
Vete corrigiendo.
Zer eragina izan du anisotropiak Big Bang teoria garatzean?
Okay, this is interesting. Interesting enough that the IPC has asked me to give a talk about this on Saturday. But the first information you have is that the universe essentially is a uniform glow, like it was a perfect sun, more perfect than our own sun. Our own sun has spots on it. But the universe is much smoother and much more uniform than that. But after many years, my team, we were able to show there were variations, the small angular variations, because we're looking out from the Earth, called anisotropies, that they were variations at about a part in 100,000. That's smoother than a billiard ball. But those are the things that represent, we believe, the quantum mechanical fluctuations when space and time itself were being created, and it leaves behind these small variations that become galaxies or clusters of galaxies, also breaks down to things like, clusters of stars and even individual solar systems. So it's not influencing the development of the universe. The universe made it those tiny imperfections in the universe are the things that make the universe really interesting to us and make the stage possible. Without them, there wouldn't be a stage. There wouldn't be the material to make the stage.
Hanek galdera orokor batekin goaz orain, 32. San Adrián Institutua baita ere Bilbao. Donna Strickland.
Zeintzuk izan dira buruan dituzun proiektuen ideiak etorkizunera begira?
So I have a few. I still try to make pulses shorter, but I'll tell you the one I'm starting with a colleague, Toshi Tajima. He is the inventor of laser acceleration. And now the biggest lasers in the world, or the most powerful lasers in the world, are working to make particles accelerate to high energies. But he wants to have them not so high, and so I just have small fiber lasers in my lab. And we're going to try to put a laser accelerator at the end of a fiber that can go down into the body and radiate what's left of a tumor after a surgeon has taken most of it away. So that's the overall goal, and my part is just the laser and fiber delivery part of it, but that's one of the things we're working on.
Wow. Orokorra berriz? Venga, jarraituko dugu orokorrak. Hausnartzen 15. Miguel de Unamuno, Bilbotik. Eta hau guztientzat. Agian Pedro zeurentzat ere.
Lau bost urte barru, guk karrera amaitzen dugunean, zein esango da egongo den ikerkuntza eta lan erronka fisika arloan?
You want to begin or you? Who begins? You.
I would say hopefully we don't know. I think science changes. I also think that we have too much of a habit of jumping on bandwagons. And so I would like to think that there's more than one big challenge, but George may disagree with me. I think it's amazing to me still that we don't know that much about quantum mechanics, that we've been studying it for 100 years and it's having a resurgence again. And it's still about the fact that, is it a particle, is it a wave? We don't know, and how does that entanglement help us?
So the answer is you keep your view open when you finish the experiment you're doing. For example, I'm doing a project with colleagues from my colleagues at DIPC, and actually from a student from the university here, and our colleagues in Hong Kong, but a bigger team. We're using the James Webb Space Telescope to look at clusters of galaxies that will work as a double lens. There's the JWST huge telescope, and then there's a great cluster of galaxies, and it's lensing far away earliest galaxies to try and see what happened at the beginning of the universe. That's a project that's going to go on for a while. It's very active now, but it will go on for some time periods, probably by the time, to the time you're in grad school. And there'll be more like that. However, like Donna, I believe new questions will come up. So we have this thing that I call ignorance. So there's the part we know, and right near what we know is our ignorance. Now here's stuff we don't even know we don't know. So our ignorance is growing all the time because our knowledge is growing, right? But what's even further out, we don't know. So science hasn't had an end to its story yet. We can hope, some of us hope we can get a theory of everything, but that's probably not likely. There's probably going to be a lot more to be done for quite some time. And it's good because it makes our life richer. You guys don't know this, but it wasn't that long ago we didn't have smartphones and stuff that we carried around in our pocket. Times are changing.
¿Cuál es Es como un principio de conservación de la energía, el principio de conservación de la ignorancia. La ignorancia inconsciente pasa a ser ignorancia consciente. So, lo que nos dice George es in circus, when the circle of knowing is small, the unknown is also small surrounding it. When you increase it, it increases. So the biggest contribution of knowledge is increased ignorance.
Yes.
Smoot's principle.
Ondo baderitzuzu,
Bibliographic.
hori, pentsatzen nuen. Perfecto. 35. Ipintza, Bergaratik, Donna Stricklandentzat.
¿Ser mujer le ha abierto muchas puertas en su carrera o se las ha cerrado?
Okay. I always am an optimistic person, so I always see the good. And I remember when I was an undergraduate doing a research project, and I spent the whole summer trying to make this little diode, right? I had to start by actually taking apart the vacuum chamber and cleaning it all, and it took the whole summer. And then it was in my hand in tweezers, and it fell on the floor. And it fell on the floor where everybody soldered. So my little diode looked the same as all the drops of solder. So I thought, I've spent my whole summer, I must find this thing and test it. And so I got down on my hands and knees and looked at each of these little pieces. And one by one, I was the only female in the group, and one by one, the male grad students came, asked what I was doing. They all got down on their knees and helped me. And I thought, I wonder if I was a male undergrad, if they would all help me. Probably not. And we found it with everybody looking. So I always think that I've been helped far more than I've been hurt by being a female.
Jarraitzen dugu zientziarekin, zientifiko-tekniko. Aurrera goaz. 78, 7-8. Zumaira goaz. Eta danentzat. Question is for everyone.
Eskerrik asko. Fisikaren inguruan aztertzeak mundu hau eta ezagutzen lagundu dizu?
Both. Yes. Do you fly on a magic carpet? Do you fly on an airplane? Which one's physics, which one's magic? Right? Does understanding physics make so we have bridges, engineers do that, so that we have, now microsurgery, we're going to have quantum communications, we're going to have everything. Imagine we hadn't discovered the electron 120 years ago, and there was no electronics. How would your life be different? Was magic going to make up the answer is studying physics has given us incredible understanding of the world, but also the ability to do many things in the world which we couldn't do before. And we've made our lives as human beings much richer, but also we can do much more damage too. There's both sides to the coin. We'll give a prize out for physics today,
I agree. I mean, I think we live longer now, and everything starts, all the science sort of starts with physics to get all the way to the biology. And so I think it's an ethical question. People ask quite often, should physics go down this path? Should it go down this path? But I trust that knowledge is always important to have. And then we also need our ethics to know when to use it and for what purpose to use it. But I don't think that's the question for the physicists. I think we want to understand how this universe works and take advantage of that.
Orokorra? Venga. Galdera orokor bat egin traetuko dugu, 19. Santa Maria ikastetxea Portugaletetik. Eta guztiek zuzenduta.
¿En algún momento pensasteis que vuestros trabajos podían tener un impacto importante en la sociedad?
You want to begin?
I was very lucky. I mean, as a graduate student, I got to do this project, and you won't understand this, but when we go to conferences, there's different sort of levels of speaking. And as a graduate student, I was always given invited talks. So I knew that the work that I had done, but I was in my 4th year of grad school, so I had many, many failures until I got this success. But I knew it would be big for the field. I could not imagine how big it would be for society in general. But I knew it was going to be big for my field of science.
I was working hard and doing science because I wanted to know and I wanted to make my contribution to what is a huge, across space and time collaboration to understand the world and to build things up. We have an amazing example of that in energy physics where thousands of people worked over decades to put together what we call a standard model, which describes the universe in the microscopic detail unbelievably accurately. And I thought, well, I can do my part to be part of this declaration. And there was interest in the kind of stuff I was doing, and it got a little attention, and that was kind of nice. But when we made the discovery with the COBE satellite, about that time there was the COBE mascot for the Olympics in Spain, the public attention was incredible and unbelievable. In Spain, this is before your time, but in Spain it was spectacular. There was, unbelievable interest and press coming to see us. I had a student who spoke Spanish, who was from Mexico, and he got to be the translator to Spanish and he got invited to Spain to give many talks and to do many kinds of things. I got invited a number of times. And it was an overnight sensation, and that was in 1992, a long time ago. But it kind of never died away completely. And then the Nobel Prize came, and it got huge again. And so it's not what I got back to doing research and doing stuff, and then the Nobel Prize came and trashed it again.
Biografikoa bidez, venga, bazen galdera biografiko batekin. 73, 7-3, jesuitak indautzutik Bilbao, Donnaren zara, Donna Strickland.
¿Tuvo usted siempre claro que tenía las mismas posibilidades que un hombre de conseguir sus logros? ¿Y tuvo siempre el apoyo de sus amigos y familia en el proceso? ¿Y su honesta confianza?
No entiendo los traductores. Un poco más lento. Repites un poco más lento, por favor.
Si quieres la leo yo.
No, repites... No, gracias. Repites un poco más lento porque da la impresión que los traductores no han enganchado, ¿no? ¿O no?
¿Tuvo usted siempre claro que tenía las mismas posibilidades que un hombre de conseguir sus logros? ¿Y el apoyo de sus amigos y familia en el proceso? ¿Y su honesta confianza?
Perfecto.
Yes, I always, I never thought because I was a female I would not have the same chance. In the 1970s, certainly in North America, but I think around the world, women's lib was huge. There was a song by Helen Reddy, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. My mother had wanted to do math when she went to university in the 40s and was told not to. And I grew up with her saying, don't ever let anybody tell you what to do. I would have been better off sticking with what I knew I should do, and I should have done math instead of English. And but also, I went to undergrad. My classmates, who of course were male, were always very good with me. And when I went to grad school, the guys in the group were all very good, and my supervisors have always been supportive. So I've been very fortunate in life in that every step of the way, my friends thought I belonged and never made a deal about it.
Orokorra? Venga. General question 72. Mendebaldea, Vitoria Gasteizetik. Oin esfortzuarekin goz.
Zaudeten tokian egoteko esfortzu handia egiteaz gain beste amets batzuei uko egin behar izan duzu eta maiten dituzuen gauzak alde batera utzi. Zeintzuk izan dira amets horiek eta asko kostatu zaizue ustea?
Yes.
But say Juke.
Very short.
One of the things I love to do is travel, and I would say that science is a great one for travel. And so to me, I've blended probably the two things I like to do, and it's worked very well. But I also made time when my children were young. I was home and had dinner with them, so I made sure that also happened. So I don't feel like I've had to give up anything.
You don't want to add anything else, no? You go with your yes.
No, the answer is yes. If you're going to pursue something with vigor and enthusiasm and focus, you're going to give up doing other things. And the Nobel Prize comes along, it gives you great new opportunities, but it also takes away your ability to do certain other things. And so it's difficult when many people are young, their parents say you can do anything, implying you can do anything and everything, you know. But in fact, if you're going to do something really stupendous and wonderful, it's going to require focus and hard work.
Galdera zientifiko bat adibidez, orain?
Bai.
Bueno. 51 ategorri eradiotik. Smoot profesorentzat.
Difficult.
It's a good one.
En tu opinión, ¿cuál ha sido el avance que ha marcado un antes y un después en la historia de la cosmología y cuál será el descubrimiento más relevante que se hará en un futuro cercano?
There are several things you can think about that were key discoveries in cosmology. The expansion of the universe by Hubble and his then formulation of the universal law expansion. The first law claimed to be absolutely universal on pretty meager data. I'll show you the data on Saturday if you want to come around and see that. And that is really spectacular because building on the work of a famous woman astronomer, he first showed that the Andromeda Galaxy was outside of our own galaxy. We didn't live in an island universe galaxy, and so on. He made these big strides, but there have been other strides. The discovery of the cosmic microwave background, you know, our team's discovery of the anisotropy. Those things were major steps and tools forward, There are other things that we can point to. Our understanding the acceleration of the universe and of the dark matter, all of those are really major discoveries in cosmology and have helped revolutionize our thinking. Are there going to be more? Yeah, the answer is there's probably one or two more big ones at least, but you don't know. Many fields go and then again, you know, long periods of consolidation. And so it's difficult to see. So if you ask what's the new discovery going to be, well, there's some I can point to that are going to be interesting, but they may not change our view of the world or the universe, if you want to think about it. So, you know, and what we think of a big advancement may be very different. As Donna was mentioning, our understanding of the real, true nature of quantum mechanics and how good we can do in quantum communications and so forth, and quantum cryptography and computing, those may have some prizes in them. So far, so good. However, you know, we don't understand the true nature of space-time. And one of the things that really excited me when we made a discovery was to realize we had the opportunity to discover the actual creation of space and time, what was the process and what was the energy scale for that. And we're getting close, and we may make that, or we may not. It depends. Sometimes you're lucky. We've been extremely lucky because the world turns out to be simple as it could be almost. I mean, it's the surprising. You would think if you ran everything together in a big pile, it's really going to get messy. Well, it doesn't. It gets easier. Otherwise, I couldn't understand the beginning of the universe, right? And we wouldn't be able to do that. There are things that happen that make it fortunate. Well, the world doesn't have to be that way. It can get complicated. So we have to see how, as human beings, we can make progress. So it's you know, when I'm encouraging my students to think about what next project they're going to do, I had one of them, you know, in our meeting say, "You guys did all the easy stuff," and I had to tell them, it wasn't easy when we did it. It's easy now that we've done it, and you can see how to do it. But it wasn't easy then. The stuff you're going to do now isn't going to be easy until you flip it over and see it a different way and make it happen.
Fantastic. Yo no puedo añadir nada cualificado a las brillantes palabras de nuestro colega y profesor del DIPC, pero sí la opinión de Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking dijo que el descubrimiento de Smoot y su equipo de la anisotropía era uno de los grandes descubrimientos del siglo y quizás de todos los tiempos de la ciencia. You remember that?
I paid him for that. Stephen and I knew each other and so forth. And in return, for his birthday, I noted Peter Diamandis and so forth. I got him a ride on the zero-G airplane, which was great because he could actually be free of his body and float around and do things like ordinary people. And that was, you know, that was payback.
Pedro, zer iruditzen telefonikako saria banatzen badugu orain? Habla egiten dugu deskantzito bat. Eskatuko diot mesedez Javier Benitori egotzeko berriz, eta ikusiko dugu.
Now is the prize.
Jaso ditugu galdera guztiak izan dira zoragarriak.
Telephone company gives a prize.
Baina bat aukeratu behar zen, eta orain jakingo dugu zein izan den. Ez dut spoilerrik egin nahi. You're too late for that. You should have sent it before, you know.
Pero la suben y la leen ellos, ¿no? ¿O la leo yo? ¿La leo yo o la leen ellos?
Creo que la leerán ellos, pero para que digas cuál es, clica y aparecerá ya en la pantalla.
Venga, pues la pregunta premiada es La 134. No sé quién la tiene, pero quien la tenga que suba y la lea desde aquí. Paula, muy bien. Pasa. Dale tú adelante. Bueno, enhorabuena, lo primero.
Gracias.
Al revés.
Así. Eso es. Vale. ¿Por qué si la radiación de fondo es isotrópica, se ha podido generar un universo anisotrópico? ¿Cómo es posible determinar los límites del universo y cartografiar su forma si este está en expansión y solo se puede observar desde dentro?
There you go.
Very good. Actually, I like this question. I like this question so much, I give you a prize too. It's a very good question. And this is one of the things that motivated me, things that I want to know the answer to. And one of the things I wanted to know when I first started studying the microwave background was the universe rotating. The universe just seems to be expanding uniformly, but it could be rotating too. But you would see the rotation because around the equator, you would see the far away galaxies moving further away than near the poles, and you can make a measurement. And even if you can't see the end, you can see shear. It's like a river going like that. I had a student, the lovely Angelica, who married another graduate student, Mark Tegmark, and then they had children. They got divorced. She was from Brazil. However, we had a Spanish graduate student who was trying to come join my group because he was crazy for her and her eyes. Okay, but I had her do an experiment, do a study of what would it look like if the universe, instead of going forever, had a finite thing. So imagine it was a cube, the simplest possible thing, and you identify this edge with that edge, so that if you're a rocket ship, it goes, right? How would that look? Imagine a cafe with tables and chairs and mirrors, and the big mirrors at the end and so forth. How would you tell if that cafe just stopped at the mirrors or kept going on or had a more complicated topology and came around in a circle? And the answer is, look at the rug. If there are ripples in the rug, and the ripples are longer than the cell unit of the thing, then it's at least as big as 2 cells or 3 cells or so. And so she did a study and said the universe has got to be bigger than 80% of the Hubble horizon, which is as far as you could possibly imagine to see because light can't get to us from that horizon. So the answer is, yeah, you can ask those questions, you can see it, and you can do it, and you can get a degree, and you can marry your husband and have children, and now she's head of a department. You can have a good career out of that, and it's fun. Very good. It was a great question. Oh.
Whoa. You stand up for the picture. También para...
Donna, a photo, please. Pedro, yeah.
Yes. You be in the middle, though. You're handing the gift.
My hair?
Zorionak, Paula. Jarrai dezagun, zorionak, Paula, oso galdera zoragarria eta oso erantzun bikaina ere. Zeiru ditzen, Pedro, jarraitzen dugu orokorrarekin? Bai?
Bai.
69. Abadiño. George. It seems the machine wants you to work a lot today. We will definitely do something for Donna.
That's the trouble with the university. They want you to work all the time,
Yeah.
teaching and researching.
But this...
Zein izan da zientziari dagokionez zure referente nagusi?
That works.
So this is actually an interesting question that I had a different version of earlier, of who was my best teacher. But a scientific role model is often a teacher. And I had a series of role models, and I was very fortunate to have mentors and have role models around who were very good. And of course, when you're really young, it's like Madame Curie, you know, Einstein, these different kind of people. And then they get to be people you really get to meet, and Fermi and so on. They get to be people who you meet. And I was, you know, asking Donna, well, we were having lunch the other day, I said, what was her experience when she signed the book, right? And they first opened this book and the Nobel thing to sign, and they opened it, and it's all these famous people, and they somehow always opened to Einstein.
For physicists.
Yes, for physicists. And, you know, these people were role models for us, but then you start to see real role models, people who hire you. One of my role models hired me to Berkeley was named Luis Alvarez, a descendant from Spain. His father was a doctor at the Mayo Clinic, and he became a physicist, and he was extremely good and interesting in a lot of ways, and he taught one of the lessons, which is to do science, you have to have confidence in yourself, which you do, but you also have to know to check yourself. It's not enough to think, I can do this and get it right, and it's right. You do it, and then you say, where did I make a mistake? What can I check? What can I be sure of? How can I do this? And this is a difference I sometimes see between men and women. A lot of the men are extremely sure they got it right, and they don't want to check. And a lot of women are not confident they can get it done, but they check carefully. And so in the end, the results are the same. But the process was very different. Now times are different. People have a different culture. So I had a series of role models, which were the classic physics role models, and then role models who were the previous generation. And it's handed down. There's now a genealogy of PhDs. You know, who was your thesis advisor, who was his thesis advisor, right back, in my case, right back to Galileo, right? It's kind of amazing, right? And in mathematics, they have a complete genealogy. In physics, it's a partial genealogy. So, in fact, there's a lot of science that's handed down word to mouth, as well as what you learn in the books and the classes.
Donna, you want to say something?
Okay, I'll just say one thing. So I actually cite Maria Gopit-Mayer in my PhD thesis. But when I read the paper that I cited, I did not know that she was a woman. I just assumed, because the paper was written in 1931, that it was a man. And it was one of the people that read my thesis went, shame on you, Donna, and stroked out the he and wrote she, because I just said M. Gopit-Mayer, blah, 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 he did, whatever. And so then later on, I read, she was featured in a magazine article in this optics journal, and I read about how she had to just follow her husband, who was a chemist, and got good jobs at good places, but she did not get paid to be a scientist until she was in her 50s and working at Argonne National Lab. And I just thought that's amazing that she would take secretarial jobs, so they would give her an office, and then she would still do her theoretical physics just for the sheer fun of it, even though she did have children and everything. And so to me, I just thought that is so amazing that somebody loves doing her physics so much that she would just be doing it just for the sheer fun of it. And so in a way, she became my role model, even though I didn't know she was a woman to start with.
Whatever.
Okay. 73. Miguel de Unamuno. Donna, your turn again.
zirkuitu fotonikoak, zirkuitu elektronikoak baino erabilgarriagoak izango diren uste duzu, edo ez?
Okay, so, and I've been known to say, because this is one of the things that we say in Optica, is that photonics is the technology for the 21st century, like electronics was for the 20th century. Optical computing comes and goes, okay? So it rises up, it comes down, it's maybe rising up again. I think there's a big push right now for silicon photonics. I don't know that it will be the one that does the calculations. What I will say is that most people don't realize that in a data center, right, there's millions of lasers there. The electrons maybe do the calculation still, or the atoms with the electrons still do the calculation, but the information is always carried by photons because they don't have mass. And so you really can't have one without the other. And even though the superconducting type of quantum computer is right now winning in the number of qubits they can have, the information still has to be delivered with photons. So it's always going to be a big part of the player of any kind of computer. It's just not necessarily the one that will do the calculation.
Fatima, ikastetxea Bilbotik eta denentzat. Come.
Zein izan da aurre egin behar izan duzuen erronkarik handiena?
I'll start. Obviously, I think one of the biggest things about being a female scientist is that this will change as there gets to be more female scientists, but when there were so few, it was too easy for us to find a male partner within science. And so most females scientists are partnered with male scientists. And so we have what's known in physics as the two-body problem. And I think that's been the toughest thing, is that I actually at one point gave up on my scientific career and became a technician at Princeton because my husband had his dream job at Bell Labs, and then he's followed me home to Canada and keeps wondering when it's his turn again. So this has been one of the biggest challenges, that we can't both be working in our dream jobs at the same time.
Okay, so I have one that's obvious because many people know about it. And that is when we were designing the COBE satellite, Cosmic Background Explorer, but COBE for the mascot, it took a long time because we got in the queue. It was proposed to be a small satellite, but then some people got kicked off of another satellite that was done at the same time, and they decided they wanted to keep them because they were favorites. And they put us into a bigger satellite. And that slowed us down because we got in the queue behind the other satellites that were gone forward. So it took extra years. And as we're getting ready to finally go towards launch, there was a disaster with the shuttle. And NASA grounded this entire fleet. And so we were looking at a situation where the launch opportunities were going to be zero for some years. And yet I had developed this team, and we were building our equipment, and we were testing it. And it was pretty much ready to go. And so what were we going to do? And I actually came over to Europe and tried to convince the European Space Agency to launch us, right, to redo it and launch us. And that made NASA a little upset at me, but I wasn't a NASA employee like the other people that were in there. And so but they realized that we were going to do it, whether they wanted to do it or not. We were going to try because some of us were so crazed. And so they said, all right, you're going to be a test case. We're going to make you rebuild your equipment that is, my team had to rebuild our equipment. The center guys got this thing and saying, and we're going to put you on a regular rocket, the old-fashioned rocket instead of the wonderful new shuttle, which wasn't so wonderful. And we were one of the first satellites to be launched like that after that situation. And, you know, the rest became history. I've actually had that happen a second time. Don't ever do a satellite with the Russians, no matter what anybody says. Do not ever do a satellite with the Russians. It is the worst deal. And so it can be worse, but there are challenges. As a researcher, you have to overcome challenges, even if they're really big and awful.
Ehun da hamazazpi. Txorierri institutua deriotik. Eta denei zuzenduko galdera.
Bai, ja dago eginda, baina uste duzu inoiz beste planeta batean biziko garela, eta bai bada, zenbat urte barru?
I think that's more for you than me. But,
They should ask Didier. Isn't he supposed to be here today?
Yeah, really. I think it'll be very hard for us to get to another planet because it's not really close by, although George's going to tell you it's only 4 years away. It won't be in my lifetime.
Not for humans, yeah.
It won't be in my lifetime. I don't know about your lifetime, but I would think not. And the one thing, even sending people to Mars and back, right? And this question came up on a different panel that I was on. And what if something goes wrong and you need to talk to a surgeon maybe back on Earth, you know? It takes 8 minutes just to have the information go back and forth. So there's a lot to consider other than just knowing that there's life or possibility of life somewhere else to move that far away.
Okay, so I have a personal prejudice here. I think it's possible we may eventually have life on other planets in our solar system. And only if we think it's the most important thing the human race can do, will we try and have humans go to an extrasolar planet. And the only way that makes sense is to freeze fertilized eggs, freeze them completely and surround them with radiation shielding and everything else, and send them a long way with robot nannies, right? And you might as well just send the robots. I mean, you only bring in the humans to contaminate the planet. It's like, it takes a lot of resources to have a human. You can turn a robot off and then turn them back on later. It just makes so much more sense to send our AI systems than it does to send humans. But if you wanna, it'll take half the GDP of the world for about 1,000 years, and you can do it.
Bai? Galdera biografiko bat egin jarraituko dugu. 75. Minas ikastetxea berriz, Barakaldotik, eta George Smoot profesoraren zara.
COVID proiektuan lanean hasi zinenean, inoiz pentsatu zenuen halako aurkikuntza esanguratsu bat egingo zenuela?
Of course. So this is actually why I chose to move from my original PhD in studying particle physics and understanding how the world works microscopically to studying cosmology. I knew eventually the snake has to bite its tail to make Ouroboros, that the absolute biggest things have to be related to the smallest things. And that if we understood the universe on the biggest scale or the smallest scales, it was going to be very similar. So I realized there were thousands of people doing particle physics, but there were only a few people doing cosmology. Therefore, no matter what I did, as long as I did my research well, it was going to be important, and it was going to be exciting, and I would make a major contribution. that I could build my own team and make a major contribution. That's the situation you look for. That's why my students said, you did all the easy things. Well, it wasn't so easy. You know, it's like going out to the west part of the United States in 1600 and trying to, you know, see where the ocean is, right? I knew that there had to be something that was, and that's because I actually am at my heart a physicist. I used to teach introductory physics to non-physics people, and I actually, in Berkeley, I changed the name of the course to Physics for Future Congressmen, and my successor changed to Physics for Future Presidents. Unfortunately, one of our presidents didn't take it. But you have to understand science in the modern days, but you have to understand that in science, you believe there's an external reality, and you believe that all competent observers observing the same experiments will see the same net results. That there isn't a subjective, you know, thing. But you also have to know that humans are incredibly fallible as observers. The humans have to check themselves and double check themselves. There's not an accident in medicine you do double-blind studies, because even blind studies get wrong results because people are very susceptible. They pick up whether the doctor has a fiction. So I had confidence that the universe was real and that the universe obeyed actual laws. The thing that I took the gamble on was that the universe would stay simple early.
Orokorra ondo iruditzen zaizu. Venga. 87. Itxaropena ikastola Trapagaranen. Eta denentzat.
I think Pedro should have to answer.
What was the question?
It's coming now.
The question, they're going to read it now.
Zer deritzozu zientzialariek artikuluak argitaratzeko jasotzen duten prezioari buruz? Uste duzu euren ondorioz iruzur zientifiko handitzen ari dela?
Well, good question.
Good question.
I think it has become a real problem. In my day, we did not even know what our citation counts were because you couldn't readily get this information, right? We had to go to a library, there was a big book, you'd have to look through this big book once a year, it would come out. There's nobody that I know bothered ever to do that. I will tell you that the paper that I published that won me the Nobel Prize, I don't think was cited for the first 2 years. So by all of today's ways of looking at it, I didn't publish it in a high impact journal, and I would have just been a total abject failure by today's standards. And so I think because it's become so easy to have these numbers and attach these numbers, and it's much easier to judge people if we just have to look at these numbers, that we've lost control a little bit about really being able to judge what is good science and what isn't good science. And I think we really, as a whole scientific society, have to figure out better ways to start doing this, because it's not just the scientific fraud that seems to be being propelled possibly by this. I just think all the hiring and everything about it, we're judging on these very strange things now.
Okay, this is something I'm actually upset about, and I got upset about it enough to give some of my colleagues a lot of trouble. So as I said, with some of my colleagues from DIPC and from Hong Kong, we were doing work with the James Webb Space Telescope. The James Webb Telescope, and I argue with Adam Rees about this, who's another Nobel laureate for the discovery of the accelerating universe. They decided to release, whenever they release a picture, they release the data. And NASA likes to release a picture every week. It's usually Tuesday. They do, they have a certain day of the week. They release it, the next day in the paper there'll be some wonderful things about what the telescope, Hubble or JWST was discovering. And they released the data. And their decision was they released that data because they didn't want to show that they were favoring anybody. They let anybody have access to that data. This made me disturbed for two reasons. One, because we have a graduate student, another graduate student, and a postdoc directly on our team, one here, one in Hong Kong, and another postdoc who will be here, who's here now, and another one's coming soon. And we were trying to teach them how to do the science carefully and review the stuff and do it. And there are people who are just rushing results out, including people that found a galaxy with a giant wormhole in it, and that is published a week after the picture was done. I mean, it made me very upset. And then it turned out one of the members of our own team, who I wasn't paying attention to because I wasn't going to the pull-up team meetings, only the local meetings, decided he could do a really quick study and see these very early galaxies. And he wrote up a paper and he sent it out to a bunch of people on the team and said, "Do you want your name on this or not?" And they sent it in, right? Very little review, very little whatever it is. And one of our colleagues who was on our weekly Zoom calls signed the paper. One of our colleagues who here at UPV and the NPC did not sign. He got in a fight and said, "This is not good enough." So I give credit to him. And anyway, I'm reading right back to the guy how, authorship means you stand behind this paper. He said, "I put my name on it because I didn't want to cause trouble, and I know the reviewers will kick it out." Well, if you actually look, 30% of the papers with James Webb Telescope data have been retracted. Yeah. Some after publication, some before publication. I think this is the tip of the iceberg because we hadn't had time to talk about this, but AI is being used more and more by students and by researchers. And the AI doesn't necessarily have the judgment to realize what it's saying is really wrong. So I think we're going to see terrible controversy, and until we teach our students that if you have your name on the paper, there are 4 important things that you must have written stuff there. You must take credit, you must take responsibility for everything that's in that paper, and so on. There's a list of things that must be before you're an author on a paper, and people haven't been teaching that to young people. So being a scientist isn't just going and do stuff. You have responsibilities to the fabric of science to keep it honest and to check against the people who are in a rush to make a name for themselves. So I got really upset about this. I read the riot act to my colleagues at the University of Paris, at the astroparticle cosmology group, and said, "Look, we have to start doing this kind of thing." It is a real issue. Part of it is publication pressure. Part of it is people just want their name in the paper, right? There are people who are doing science blogs, right? Just like they do Me Too's videos, and the people putting the greatest, latest science out, right? And how is a high school student going to know what's real science and what's not?
But yo tengo una pregunta para los dos, porque has dicho tenemos que enseñar a los estudiantes a ser responsables. ¿Solo a los estudiantes? ¿A los profesores no? Porque hay muchos profesores que también ponen su nombre en el paper sin saber, ¿no?
Well, I have a simple question. Who here is not a student?
Okay.
You're a student?
Yeah.
Donna's a student. I'm a student. They're all students.
But
yes, we have a responsibility for even our most senior colleagues.
Yeah, but when you were referring, we must to teach the students, I was worried that many professors will do well learning also that, no?
Yes, they're students too.
No, but not because of that.
I mean, I actually learned this lesson very early on, in that when I wrote my very first paper, the one I won the Nobel Prize for, I put the colleague's name who helped me take the final data on the paper. And he then said, "No, you've worked really hard on this. Don't let anybody else take credit away from how much time you've done. I don't deserve to be on this paper." And he took his name off. And so I just always took that as a big lesson, that if you haven't really made a big contribution to the paper, you really, you can be an acknowledgement at the end, but you shouldn't be a main person. And so I've taken that to heart. And I'll also say, and I'm sure George has gotten this a lot, that once you win the Nobel Prize, everybody tentatively connected to you wants your name on their paper. They think it probably helps boost their paper maybe. And so, and I have to keep saying, no, I have this rule that I have to have really contributed to the paper in order to be on the paper.
¿Cómo vamos de tiempo?
Bastante bien, vamos de tiempo. Nos puede quedar un cuartito de hora, 20 minutos de preguntas y luego ya das tu resumen de la jornada, si te parece, ¿vale? O sea que todavía nos queda para alguna pregunta más.
Hacemos 15 minutos más, resumen
15 preguntas más,
y al
resumen,
bocadillo.
Y ya fotografía, todo el mundo feliz.
Fotos.
¿Vamos con la científico-técnica?
Venga.
How do you feel about
Sí, científico-técnica.
Professor Strickland, George Smoot? What do you rather have? A biographical question?
Just pick it at random.
Okay, whatever.
Just
Random.
push the question button.
So I will go with science this time. 62, and it goes to Miguel Unamuno from Vitoria-Gasteiz, and you can all answer it.
Zein izan zen Nobel sarira eraman zintuen ikerketaren inflexio puntua eta noiz sentitu zenuen benetan hain berezia zela?
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
Okay, so the turning point for what led to our Nobel Prize, really, Gerard had the idea the year before I started working on it, but he did not know how to do it. And so I will say that this is what's maybe not so known because a few of us get named, but it takes a whole village to get science to work. And so the thing that's made us start working on it was the fact that it was becoming very big in the field of short pulse lasers to do pulse compression of these type of laser called neodymium-YAG laser. And it was a pulse that was roughly 100 picoseconds, and a picosecond is a millionth of a second. And they were compressing down to roughly 1 picosecond. And when we saw this at the one conference, it was like, wow, that's how we do it. All we have to do between the fiber stretcher and the compressor is put our amplifier in, and we have CPA. And so I remember the group meeting right there at the conference with it. It was like, oh my gosh, we've got to do it now, because everyone's going to see the way to do it. That wasn't true. It was only because we were already thinking about how to do it that we saw it. But it was other people's work that was the turning point.
So I'm missing the translation for some reason, but I will answer a question.
What's the turning point?
No, which was the turning point in your research when you realized that there was something different, something really important online? Or was a particular moment, a turning point?
This is really difficult to answer because not only were they working on the COBE satellite for eventually 2 decades, okay, so longer than you students have been alive that I was working on this satellite, having the idea, making the design, getting the approval from NASA, building the apparatus, the team that knew how to operate it and calibrate it, and then finally taking the data and then analyzing the data and so on. So I knew whatever we found was going to be important because you can look at the problem is how did the stars come into being? They had to go through the fireball. Imagine the whole universe is as hot as the sun uniformly everywhere, and you threw the sun in it. What would happen? Sun is gone. So why are there suns? Why are there stars? You knew something, studying this radiation carefully was going to tell us something about the universe. The question was, what's it going to tell us? And so there's a turning point when we start to realize we see these variations, and these variations seem to be independent of scale. And these variations have all these unusual kind of properties. And they don't look quite right. And in fact, they still don't look quite right, but they look pretty right. And at that point, I realized that this crazy idea of inflation has got to be right, and that we understand how space and time is being made. But does our data support that, or does it not support that? And actually, when we made the announcement, we invited Alan Guth and Paul Steinhardt and some other people to come to the announcement because we knew it was going to change their lives too, right? Because they were the architects of different models. And it was, it was a slow realization that this incredible model of what's happening in a tiny fraction of a second told us what the embryo universe was going to look like, and then the embryo universe told us what the rest. So, yeah, but the real thing was we finally give our talks and present this publicly, and the American Physical Society says, okay, we're going to arrange a press conference for you. And we're there at a press conference, and there are as many reporters as there are students asking questions, right? And they go, wow. And they started saying, put this in terms we can understand, right? Not, you found all this complicated structure with this. It's like you were a doctor operating in an emergency room, and they bring a patient in and you start cutting on them, and you look down and it's your son or your daughter. You feel differently about cutting them up, even though you shouldn't, you do. And that's when I really understood the implication for the rest of the world, but I understood intellectually, wow, I know something about the universe everybody else does, and I get to share it with them. That was the thrill. That's, only happened like 3 times in my life that I made discoveries that I knew were special and got to do that. But I wasn't ready for the press that happened. That press is the only thing that's kind of like getting the Nobel Prize, where you have an incredible. There was press that was unbelievable. It was the people doing the, there were newspapers in those days instead of electronic stuff. And there was all the stuff going on, and then there were the weekly periodicals, the monthly, they all came and interviewed you one after another on TV, all this stuff. And it was like, they knew it was big, whatever. And the thing that really was amazing to me was the editors of the Washington Post, which is there are 2 really important newspapers in the United States, apologized to the reporters for not putting the story above the fold. It was on the front page of the Washington Post, but it was below the fold. And the reporters were telling them, this story's so big, you got to put it above the, it's more important than, so-and-so being caught doing stuff in Congress, right?
Fantastic.
And so it's hard for me to say, when did it hit me? Because it's different between knowing it intellectually and knowing it in your, in your spirit.
Egingo dugu beste bat, nik badaukat gero beste galdera bat, eta laburpena ondo dago?
Zoragarri. Nik uste oso ondo bat, there has been some great questions.
Beste galdera orokorra orduan.
Okay. So we will finish with this one?
Not finish. I have one more. But I personally, I want to use the privilege of being the moderator to have a question.
Okay.
After the next one.
Okay, so let's do this one and then, okay. It is a general question and it's the number 44. Mungia George Smoot again. But I think that it works for everyone.
How come me? I'm afraid of your question.
Really?
What is it?
Have you ever felt fear of the unknown?
I always have curiosity about the unknown.
44.
And sometimes you have a little caution and you don't stick your hand in the jaw of the tiger until you've poked him with a stick or something. But you know, I want to know stuff. I want to know how things are going and what happens. And so I always think that even if it's kind of scary, you should still try and understand it and see what's going on. But you should be careful too.
Okay, I'll answer too. I think one of the disservice we do to the field of science is that until you're in grad school, we teach science about it being all the stuff that's been learned before, and we have to learn all of the science that we learned before. But doing science is about not knowing. That's what doing science is about. We don't know something, and we want to know that. And so if we didn't have an unknown, there would be no reason for science. That's what it's all about. And so I think it is wondering why something is working the way it is, or why the universe is the way it is, and not knowing it. And so scientists have to be very open to the fact that we don't know most things.
Bueno, mi pregunta es para los dos, pero viene motivada por una frase que le leí a Smoot, y mi inquietud es por qué hay unas ciertas ramas de la ciencia que se preocupa una cosa y límites con otros, más en concreto. Con el gran descubrimiento de George, él dijo, o yo le leí, se le atribuyó, nos puede ratificar, que había visto en esta anisotropía, había visto la huella de Dios. Los astrofísicos hablan mucho de Dios.
The face of God, but yeah.
The face of God, the face of God. Oh, los astrofísicos hablan mucho de Dios en sus preocupaciones, los biomoleculares menos, los físicos de láseres menos. La pregunta a los dos es, ¿esta preocupación por la trascendencia es origen de una educación, de un contacto con otras ramas del conocimiento, con otras ramas de las humanidades, porque la ciencia es parte esencial del humanismo moderno y que hace o viene intrínsecamente ligado a la astrofísica? Dios no juega los dados con el universo, no sé. Todo no lo dice un físico de láseres o no lo dice un biólogo molecular. ¿Cómo veis esto? Primero Josh y luego Donna.
Okay. Donna first or me?
You first.
Okay.
Because you said the sentence.
All right. So it's funny because it's evidence that reporters often get their job wrong. And they weren't prepared. There were not many science reporters in those days, so a room this many reporters in it had a lot of people who were social page or sports reporters or whatever. They weren't qualified to do this. And so when they were having that great evidence, and as I said, they want me to put it in terms that the average reporter in person could understand, I gave an example that it's the largest structures and they're this unbelievably humongous and this kind of stuff, and there's so forth, and then this is important and it tells you what's going to happen. And finally, one of the things I said, this is so amazing. It's like if you were religious, if you were religious, it would be like seeing God. That reported in about a third of the newspaper, he's seen the face of God. And the brothers Bogdanov, who used to be famous in France, used that as evidence for God and had a big program on TV, a TV program, that series that went on for some months, you know, saying about it. It's a problem of using analogy. If you have a complicated science thing and you try and explain it to the public with analogies, and the people who are doing it still don't know what's going on, they're going to get some kind of stuff. But there is somehow an instinct, you know, an instinct that when you start talking about the creation of the universe, to bring God in. I don't know why. The head of Ray Weiss, who got the Nobel Prize more recently, was chair of our science working group. And after it's done, he takes the pipe out of his mouth and says, I wish the hell he hadn't said that. And I said, does he see the irony in what he just said? But But you have to look at science and realize that science made progress in the early days because people focused in on narrow areas. And the progress of science has been joining these narrow areas and unifying them. So we had system mechanics, and we had thermodynamics, right? And we have thermal physics, right? And it unifies. And so we have this whole set of unifications that have been going on. And we think that physics, you know, atomic physics, quantum mechanics, and communications, and biology are all related, right? We think it's DNA, and it's a molecular machine that does quantum mechanics, makes all these things happen. All these things are united, whereas in the old days, you know, it's a question of if you cut off a puppy dog tail and put it in the mud, would it make a new puppy dog or something? It's, you know, it's a wholly different kind of view that you're beginning to unify the fabric of science. Right?
Well, I think, first of all, it got written up that I do go to church, and so then I've had to answer this question. I also go to a very liberal church where you can believe anything, and I didn't realize, and so in answer to your question, somebody who wanted to write about this said to me, you know, Newton was looking for God's code in the universe, and that's where it is in physics, but there are as many biologists looking for God's code in the very complicated biology and how complicated the DNA and everything is. I personally think if God wanted to tell us something, he could make it a whole lot easier. So I don't really think God's writing really complicated code that we're trying our best to see. I think you could say I'm right over here. And so I don't think that's what it is. And I really don't think that science even questions that. I just think that science really, we've been given the universe. Whether God gave us the universe or not, we were given this universe to understand, and we live in it, so we want to understand it. And so that's all there is to it. I think we're just trying to understand it the best we can.
I got more. I can add more. I can add more here.
Okay, yo creo que ya.
If we go into the history of science, there was a time period when the church was running things very carefully, and the people who were doing science, you know, they started doing study of light and of understanding why light took the minimum or the, you know, the stationary path through that. And the argument they were making in the church, this is understanding God. Yeah. This is understanding, you know, we're studying light and God is light and so on and so forth. Because people had to justify why they were studying the thing when you know, there are certain people think that certain religious books have all the information you need. There's at least two religions that hold this very strongly, and so forth. So it's kind of hard to see. I had a wonderful experience. I got invited to the 400th anniversary of Galileo to the Vatican for a conference and to give a talk in the conference. And they had Galileo's original books because they put him on trial. And he had to turn in all his publications. And they're beautiful. I mean, the books are beautiful. And they brought him out for this anniversary and stuff. But the thing that was going on was the crisis of confidence among the philosophers and the religious people, because for centuries there had been more people doing philosophy, but even more people doing religion, and yet science was coming up big and strong and powerful. How is it possible that in the modern world, science is something that people respect and look at, where religion and philosophy are kind of ignored?
It's going back the other way there, George, so don't worry.
Yeah, well, there are waves, right? So you understand, but it's very clear. If you're studying the world, there's a huge amount of stuff out there to study. If you're studying the scriptures, there's not so much to study. New ideas are much harder to come by in those fields.
Bueno, ya para terminar, un resumen más breve que habitualmente suelo hacer. He tenido el privilegio de moderar todos los encuentros que se han hecho desde que empezamos con el en 2005, creo. Bueno, eso me dirá Sidoya o muchas. Pero en cualquier caso es el momento de agradecer muy sinceramente a los profesores primero, a los profesores que habéis trabajado con los estudiantes, que nos habéis dado esta respuesta maravillosa de gente. Estas preguntas tan impresionantes que hacen pensar a cualquiera y que las respuestas que se han dado aquí pueden ser y son, sin duda, muy pensadas, muy brillantes, muy válidas, pero habrá otras opciones, ¿no? También hemos visto que estas dos personas, estas dos eminencias son personas optimistas, que frente a un pesimismo que se está generalizando, creen que el mundo es comprensible, tienen fe en que podemos entender si trabajamos duro, y que además de ese conocimiento objetivo saldrá algo bueno. Por supuesto que habrá problemas y habrá cosas malas y será la eterna dualidad de la ciencia, pero que habrá cosas buenas, que los problemas tienen solución y que trabajando se solucionará. Yo creo que eso es importante. Pero el mensaje para mí más importante de hoy es que dos eminencias con las que habéis hablado son personas normales. Son personas que tienen problemas en la vida, que han disfrutado de la vida, que tienen sentido del humor, que incluso igual Telefónica le dará un iPad y si insiste con otra pregunta, que son personas normales y que vosotros, con vuestros profesores y en el colegio, y si trabajáis, podéis ser como ellos sin ningún problema, porque ellos no pensaron que iban a ser premios Nobel. No trabajaron para ser premios Nobel. Trabajaron bien, disfrutaron y así ha ido todo tan bien como os irá a vosotros y nos irá a nosotros. Eskerrik asko y aurrera.
Good positive note.
Eskerrik asko, Pedro, zure hitzengatik, eskerrik asko, profesor Strickland, eskerrik asko, George Smoot, eskerrak zuei guztiei, benetan galdera zoragarriak izan dira, and I really enjoyed this session. So, as I was saying in the beginning, what we're missing now is a picture that we're going to take all together outside, and then we will have a break for coffee and for what we call amaiketako, which is literally the thing that we eat at 11. And since it's 11:20, I think we're right there, so we can go for an amaiketako together and do the general picture. Thanks again to everyone. Thanks to Donna Strickland, George Smoot, and Pedro Echenique. Azkeneko txaloa, venga.